Steam Next Fest is a tri-yearly event where thousands of developers put out demos for their upcoming games, and every time it rolls around, I sort through them to deliver you my recommendations for some of the coolest, freshest, and most interesting titles. There are so many games that I think are worth you checking out, but might not make the main list for one reason or another. And for the ones that don't make the main list, I try to feature in at least other parts of the video, like the ones you're seeing on screen right now. This time, I sifted through thousands of Steam pages and played through a whopping 181 demos. Being able to check out all these demos is an amazing distraction, but every time I come up for air, I can't help but feel a little bit guilty. With the world in such a crazy state, I and many of us who enjoy video games can forget that we are so privileged in ways that we may not even comprehend. So, to try and put some good back into the world after being spoiled by dozens and dozens of hours of free gaming, I'll be donating $1 for every demo I played to the Sudanese Red Crescent in their campaign to help push back against Sudan's current humanitarian crisis, one of the most devastating in human history, providing shelter, food, medicine, and water to millions upon millions of displaced Sudanese people. My challenge to you, whether you're just an individual or maybe even a representative of an organization that has much more resources, is to do the same. Maybe not on the same scale. Not everyone has the financial security to donate, but we can all take time or effort out of our days to put some good back into our communities. For every game you play or wishlist this next fest, try to match each one with some sort of service for your fellow man. It can be anything from 10 cents donated per game, an hour of community service, or even just a simple message checking on the well-being of your friends and family. Don't forget, too, that your employer can often match your donations. Well, I've made you wait long enough, so on to the list. While browsing the thousands of games that now comprise the ever-growing Steam Next Fest, one thing that I search for, and something that the indie space is, in my opinion, the most fertile ground for, is novelty. So many ideas have been rehashed over and over and over, and showing me the umpteenth roguelike deck builder is going to be a hard sell when it has to compete with releases like Slay the Spire 2 that dominate the space, especially if they aren't iterating heavily on the incredibly honed ideas in those titles. One genre that sees a lot of oversaturation during Next Fest is the Metroidvania, and no, I won't call it a search action game, you psychos. With the last few years pumping out titles that keep fighting for the greatest of all time, like Hollow Knight Silksong, Prince of Persia Lost Crown, Nine Souls, and more, it's hard to push back against both poor discoverability and genre fatigue. But developer Kyle Thompson's last two titles, Islets and Crypt Custodian, managed to make names for themselves as indie Metroidvania darlings, based purely on the razor-sharp polish of game design they display. Both games mentioned have near-perfect pacing, knife-edge difficulty balancing, and runtimes that end at exactly the right moment you want them to. It's the gaming equivalent of the best damn cheeseburger you've ever had. Nothing crazy or fancy, but sometimes the basics, done right, hit better than anything else. And his upcoming Well Dweller is him again firing on all cylinders. His iconic yet simple art, quirky character designs, and clean animation style, as well as his brother's fantastically ethereal music, all serve as the perfect table setting to his crystal clear understanding of what makes a Metroidvania fun, cutting all the fat that can sometimes bog down well-meaning attempts to iterate on such a well-established formula without removing the meat of what keeps pulling you to explore and traverse such a thoughtfully handcrafted world. Even if you are tired of Metroidvanias, I would challenge you to try this one to discover how hard it is to put down. About Fishing is the next game from developer Water Museum, who created the spectacularly tactile and wondrously vibey Arctic Eggs. Like their last game, About Fishing absolutely oozes atmosphere, and the Water Museum's Max Payne-like blend of retro graphics with photorealistic textures again serves to give their games such a grounded sense of place that really reels you in.
Huh? You know what I mean?
Which is accentuated by the self-professed influence of games like Shenmue, in the way that you navigate and dwell in the game's sleepy little town, walking old beaten paths from store to pond and beyond. The game's simultaneously satisfyingly simmy yet wacky fishing mechanics really anchor the gameplay.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
With unique spins on what is often relegated to just a mini-game. Although I don't want to spoil too much about them, as the gameplay opening up to you is a treat in and of itself. But suffice it to say that this game is much more than mashing a single button when a fish hits your lure. The game's narrative will quickly hook you.
This is the comedy police. The joke's too funny.
I'm not going back to jail!
As you try and uncover the truth behind the death of a woman that has haunted your character since they were a child. And, based on Arctic eggs, I'm sure the Water Museum has some wild and surreal twists in store for us. Echo Weaver is a self-proclaimed Metroidbrania, a twist on the Metroidvania formula where progression is often found in the form of new knowledge rather than new abilities. This game from studio Moonlight Kids eschews a combat-heavy focus to emphasize its puzzles and secrets, ones that require not an ever-growing set of upgrades or skills, but only a deepening of your understanding of the game's mechanics and interactions. After a short tutorial section where you're handed your toolkit for the rest of the game, you are tasked with figuring out how to maneuver through the game's world using your abilities to jump, fight, teleport, and even time loop to poke and prod until you figure out how the things around you click. Echo Weaver takes some of the best and most interesting design beats of games like Outer Wilds, with you using the ever-ticking game clock to strategically arrive at key locations before or after events in the game world that affect outcomes that increase your inventory of options. And Animal Well, where a seemingly simple set of verbs slowly reveal their depth to you across the length of a game where secrets surround you without you even realizing it. Additionally, Echo Weaver includes some nice quality of life features like a journal akin to the one found in Majora's Mask 3D that help you keep track of your discoveries and quandaries, and the pacing and difficulty of the game felt just right. I have no notes for Moonlight Kids, and if the game keeps opening up and expanding in the same ways as the demo, I'm sure they'll have a hit on their hands. 2025 held many games that quickly slotted themselves in my top games of all time, but one that snuck up on me was Deconstruct Team's Many Nights a Whisper. A short interactive experience on the nature of societal and community pressures, belief, expectations, and more. A game that the longer I spent away from it, the more it stuck with me, with its ideas constantly slithering through my mind for months to come. And their upcoming title, Virtue and a Sledgehammer, promises to do the same. Virtue and a Sledgehammer is again another narrative-first experience, where you wield the destructive power of a 20-pound sledge to dismantle the bastardization of your hometown into a hollow facade of digitized neighbors, seemingly at the hands of your own family. Through discovering memories hidden within the stone and wood of the highly destructive environments, Deconstruct Team delivers gut punch after gut punch, touching on subjects of gender, sex, race, disability, and more, without feeling like a laundry list of trauma strewn across the pixels for cheap reactions, but coming from what feels like a genuine place of lived experience. And the vulnerable eagerness of the writing reminds me of one of my favorite and most well-regarded games of all time, 1000 Times Resist. A repeat publisher alumni to my best of the fast lists, and a studio that has quickly solidified itself as a cornerstone in my gaming go-tos, Dread XP and Lovely Hellplace again show their keen eye and hand when it comes to engrossing world building and unique mechanics in their newest outing, Entropy. After knocking it out of the park and proving that first-person RPGs still can have real depth when it comes to world building and meaningful decisions in Dread Delusion, Lovely Hellplace pivots again to a more JRPG-inspired game in Entropy. Even from its earliest hours, it's clear that Entropy takes from its big brother Dread Delusion in terms of establishing an aesthetic and world that feels both completely new and alien, yet grounded and nostalgic, hearkening to beloved franchises like Elder Scrolls, Gothic, and even Final Fantasy. Entropy's differences start to show immediately as well, though, with its tactical turn-based combat that features dynamic limb damage and targeting, positional considerations, permanent disfigurements, and even party member permadeath. After decades of playing turn-based RPGs, it takes a lot to keep me engaged with systems that can feel rote or tedious, but Lovely Helpless manages, with its snappy tactics and heavy stakes, to keep me reeled in and each combat feeling rewarding. While it may be naive to blindly trust a studio, I have absolute trust that Entropy will be another wholly unique and novel game that I will adore start to finish. Diorama Break, despite its slightly generic fantasy appearance on first blush, manages to break away from the shackles that normally keep me away from JRPGs during NextFest, containing fresh approaches for both its unique narrative that wastes no time in taking off, and gameplay that explores territory I haven't seen in its contemporaries. Where often in many JRPGs you play a rather milquetoast self-insert of a hero chosen by the gods to go on a journey to defeat a great evil threatening the world, Diorama Break has you playing the patron deity to our protagonist, who communes with you on the day he has to fulfill the prophecy and become the hero that the world has been waiting on. Instead of choosing dialogue choices with NPCs, we can communicate, question, and suggest things to our hero, as well as bestowing him with the power that dictates the gameplay of combat in Diorama Break, the ability to stop time and see the game plan of our enemies. Like Tactics Classic Into the Breach, the grid-based combat of Diorama Break would be impossible without knowing when and how our enemies would attack, being generally outnumbered and overpowered by our foes at all times. Luckily, as a being outside of the world of the game, we, and our hero by extension of our connection, have the ability to see exactly how and when our enemies will attack, giving us the opportunity to deftly step out of the way at the last moment or time a counterattack to interrupt a swing that would normally end us in a heartbeat. Not enough games tie their narrative and mechanics together in such a neat way, and I am looking forward to seeing how they push the envelope of that ludonarrative harmony. Games inspired by From Software's Kingsfield series are an easy, guilty pleasure of mine, and a subgenre of games I am not ashamed to have occupy at least a single slot on every video I make, as it's clear that the formulas that would go on to suffuse almost all of modern gaming in the form of Souls-like game design has stood the test of time and provides some of the best dungeon crawling on offer. I've previously covered games like Verho, Curse of Faces, Hark the Ghoul, Labyrinth of the Demon King, and touched on games like Lunacid, all games which have found adoring player bases, and I have no doubt that Queen's Domain will fall cleanly into that very same pantheon. Where the aforementioned games focus heavily on delving through caves, tunnels, and corridors, all things core to the experience of dungeon crawling, Freshly Baked Games takes a different approach by setting the entirety of Queen's Domain on a deeply interconnected island, absolutely brimming with verticality, shortcuts, and secrets. While in the demo you are unable to obtain one of the core features of the game, the Flying Sword, there were still ways to experience the Dark Souls-esque looping nature of the map. Luckily, rather than feeling like you're backtracking into completed areas that should just be ignored as a location to quickly pass through, the developers acknowledge your progress and shortcuts by locations changing as you progress, a la Hollow Knight. For all my talk of genre fatigue, games like this are always going to catch my eye. Celeste is widely considered one of the greatest indie games of all time, being phenomenal across all fronts: gameplay, music, story, and visuals. So when I heard that the pixel artist of Celeste was going to make their own game with music by Disasterpeace, who's also done some of my favorite soundtracks in It Follows, Fez, and Hyper Light Drifter, I was immediately intrigued on pedigree alone. And if nothing else, that pedigree is made immediately aware in Neverway, a game that defies normative genre barriers and creates a blend that feels wholly its own. I've played so many games and demos in my life that, generally speaking, I can place most games into a box with some recognizable labels after just a few minutes of trailers and gameplay. But I have to admit that Neverway kinda has me stumped. At times, it almost feels like it's hinting at the depth of systems in an immersive sim, but then flips the script a second later and acts like it's heading towards the direction of a more narrative-heavy horror game, only to round another corner and act like an action RPG, and again making me do a double take as it shows its hand of slow life farming elements. Regardless of what the end result of all these systemic teases are, I'm enthralled enough in what was on offer from both an aesthetic and gameplay perspective during the prologue demo to make the commitment and dive in once Cold Blood Inc. releases Neverway in October of this year. While I have been known in the past to highlight games that Iron Pineapple has already included in his wonderful YouTube series Steam Dumpster Diving, I've also beaten him to the punch a few times, which he obviously totally cares about as much as I do. Eden's Inferno is another one of those games that is going to blow up in popularity if and when he covers it. And developer Thad, whose YouTube channel at Enraged Terrier has devlogs of the game's development, totally deserves it for this hidden gem of a game that combines movement shooter speed, precision, and traversal with the interconnected world design of Metroidvanias and Souls games. One of the most fun parts of movement-heavy games, and specifically Metroidvanias, like the indie hit Pseudo Regalia, is the ability to sequence break with mastery over its traversal systems. And whether intentional or not, Eden's Inferno gives you that same sort of freedom and rewards your curiosity with secrets galore. If you're familiar with the aforementioned Iron Pineapple, you might remember a game he covered with a similar premise, Explosivania, a first-person Metroidvania based around rocket jumping. And while that game might lean more into the Counter-Strike-esque momentum-based traversal mechanics, one common complaint with that game is that it feels like it doesn't flesh out its combat mechanics enough. But luckily, Eden's Inferno makes sure to put combat on a pedestal of equal importance to its platforming and exploration, with tough and interesting boss fights that push your mastery of the game's combat and movement mechanics. Hypnospace Outlaw is one of my favorite puzzle games of all time, not least of all because its pristine 90s personal home computing aesthetic, the entire game taking place on the desktop and web browser of a fictional operating system that feels like it should be accompanied by an America Online free trial disc. A format and look that, while not the first use of it, has definitely inspired an influx of games trying to capture that nostalgic neonatal era of computers. Desktop Explorer takes this idea even further by putting its puzzles within the very fabric of its invented operating system, making you interface with files of all types, programs ranging from pack-in boredom killers to word editors and faux early PC games, all while keeping you on your toes by teasing the haunted nature of your device, a la Kinetopad, with hidden messages, seemingly sentient apps, and more. As a kid, I used to make little ARGs for my friends within the files and folders of our library computers of our tiny school to stave away boredom during study hall or off periods. And Desktop Explorer feels like the natural endpoint of that sort of idea, and developer Recurring Dream has their thumb precisely on the pulse of what makes those kinds of puzzles and detective work so engrossing to kids of the 90s like myself. I tried Mortal Shell 1 a few years back, and I remember shutting it off and deleting it from my hard drive within a good 15 minutes of starting it, thinking that it was one of the most dog-water awful Souls-likes I had ever had the displeasure of playing. So when developer Cold Symmetry announced the sequel Mortal Shell 2, Electric Boogaloo, I was equal parts surprised and doubtful. Out of morbid curiosity, though, I decided to check out the open beta for Mortal Shell 2, Too Mortal, Too Furious, and was legitimately floored with how much they had improved their take on the Souls-like formula in their intervening half-decade. Therefore, I am extremely happy to report that Mortal Shell 2 Shell Harder is a triumph of Souls-like game feel. And in fact, they've put enough of the spin on the Souls-like formula that it plays almost more like God of War 2018 than something like Dark Souls 3. The removal of stamina management and stat allocation, the faster-paced combat, your ranged sub-weapons, the emphasis on keeping up the aggression and having an open zone design gives Mortal Shell 2, The Empire Shells Back, more of an action game with Souls inspirations type of feel, rather than the inverse formula that many successful FromSoft imitators have used. As long as Cold Symmetry can keep up the pace and deliver good fight and level designs across the rest of the game, a big ask I know, then Mortal Shell 2, The Shellquel, could very well become one of my favorite Souls-likes. It's kind of wild. As someone whose first home console was a Nintendo 64, To look back now and see the games that defined my childhood, now classified as retro. The indie scene has seen an explosion of games in the last 10 years that call back to the PS1 and Nintendo 64 eras, but as the inexorable march of time trudges onward, we unks of the gaming world have to contend that even the games of our teenage years will eventually become the face of peak retro gaming. And while part of Sprawl Zero's 2000s first-person shooter aesthetics and sensibilities make me feel like I could at any moment poof into a cloud of bone dust, it's also so cool to see that era of games used as a touchpoint for new indie hits. Sprawl Zero looks like the quintessential game on a CRT in a teenager's room in a long-standing TV drama, in the best sort of way. It feels like someone took Halo, Time Splitters, and Prey, stuck them in a blender with bits and pieces of the aughts, and poured them into a Titanfall 2-shaped mold. With features like momentum-based diving and bullet time a la Max Payne or Severed Steel, I hope the final version of the game keeps up the adrenaline-pumping pacing and keeps introducing more fun abilities and traversal. The obvious influence when looking at the key art for Duskfade is Kingdom Hearts. Main character Zirion's clockwork-inspired sword is about as close as you can get to copying Sora's Keyblade, while still being somewhat legally distinct. But while it may look like Kingdom Hearts, Duskfade's mechanical inspirations lie much closer to the big three of 6th generation gaming, Jak, Sly, and Ratchet, with its collect-a-thon-style platforming and simple and cartoony combat. Funnily enough, I actually gave a nod to Duskfade's old demo in the sizzle reel at the end of one of my previous videos, where it barely didn't make the cut from the main list. But whatever developer Weird Beluga did in the 9-ish months since then has really made Duskfade's vision shine. The platforming and combat feel snappy and accessible, yet with just enough challenge to remain engaging. And the game's art direction makes me feel like a kid sitting on the floor playing my PS2 on a Saturday morning. One of my favorite movies of all time is Arrival, a film about a linguist who is tasked with learning to communicate with extraterrestrial life forms that are so different from us that at the onset of the movie, it seems like it would be easier to learn to communicate with a papaya. But by reverse engineering the ideas behind linguistic relativity, which state that our language shapes how we think, the scientists in the film are able to crack the code behind the aliens' strange form of communication. And the message from deep space is basically that whole premise, but turned into a puzzle game that takes place behind a terminal hooked up to a transmitter with some sort of alien life form on the other end trying to establish contact. Linguistic games are always tricky, as it's a fine line to avoid making the puzzle of deciphering language feel too gamey, but also not making it as obtuse and difficult as the job of the linguists in the aforementioned movie. But if the demo for the message from deep space is any indication, then developer Apples in My Pants... Oh, okay, hold on. We really have to work on these developer names, guys. Apples in My Pants? Like you're storing them in your pants? Or are you... Actually, I don't want to know. Anyway, like I was saying, if the demo is any indication, then they seem to have cracked the formula, as the game did an excellent job of threading that needle, making the puzzles challenging and rewarding real-life knowledge of math and science, but not penalizing you if you have gaps in your knowledge, with a good diegetic hint system that presents itself through the helpful, but not overbearing, input of your fellow teammates and scientists assigned to the project of deciphering and communicating with their counterparts across the cosmos. If at any point in time you looked up what the contents of the golden record on the Voyager craft were, then you are in fact in this game's core demographic. Penguin Colony is the next game from Ahitereiria-based studio Aura Game Digital, whose Maori heritage is a core part of their previous game, Umurangi Generation, an excellent narrative and photography game that takes place in a dystopian version of Tauranga Aotearoa that is looking down the barrel of an impending apocalypse. And through the lens of the intensely Maori experience of enduring colonization, bigotry, and the powerful survival that comes from community and heritage, gave us one of the most unique and quietly powerful pieces of science fiction in recent years. Penguin Colony, while not as directly connected to Ahitereiria and Aotearoa as their previous game, still tackles ideas of colonization and fascism by placing you in the flippers of penguins whose home has become overrun with Nazis and other factions trying to unlock the secrets of cosmic entities beyond their understanding. A reimagining of classic H.P. Lovecraft stories At the Mountains of Madness and The Shadow Out of Time, as an exploration-heavy walking, or I guess I should say waddling, simulator. In a time when memoir games have finally found decent footing in audiences that appreciate their uniquely singular vision and experience, it's so refreshing for cultures and identities that have not only been historically underrepresented, but fully oppressed, to finally be able to share their experience through their amazing art. Garawe. An icy cold take among RPG fans is that Persona is one of the best RPG series ever made. Its combination of daily school life, interpersonal connections and friendships between the characters, fun minigames, deep and complex combat, dark emotional stories, and its iconic juxtaposition of the mundane and the weird all come together in a cacophony of things that somehow just harmonize perfectly. And Catechesis takes this concoction, extracts the JRPG, and replaces it with another time-tested formula, one borrowed directly from games like Resident Evil. While both games share their shadowy narrative, they differ in some key ways. Where Persona has turn-based combat and creature collecting, Catechesis has slow, deliberate gunplay against horrifying monsters. Where Persona leans on dungeon crawling, Catechesis in turn has exploration and item-based progression and puzzles. While its gameplay is already an intoxicating amalgam of some of my favorite games, its aesthetic, refined from developer Brekekeke's previous cult hit Yuppie Psycho, is 90s anime rendered in pixels that so specifically recall the computer games of the same era, namely the art and animation of Humongous Games, makers of the much more family-friendly Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam, and Putt Putt. While I've never personally played Yuppie Psycho, I know Brekekekex nailed its signature shape-shifting tone in that game, bouncing between blood-curdling horror and absurd comedy, and based on the praise I've heard for its narrative, I have high hopes for their newest title. Physics-based games are never not funny to me, and games with unique traversal are never not interesting to me. So when I saw 4x4 in a furniture store, I knew it was in for some peak entertainment. I feel like the elevator pitch for this game had to have coalesced after a blunt rotation where someone said something along the lines of, "I've heard a bull in a china shop before, but what about a Jeep in an IKEA store, dude? That would be crazy." Because of how in the hell does someone arrive to that combination of things? Regardless, they must have tapped into some sort of fundamental frequency of the universe, because as strange and stupid as the idea sounds, it makes for the perfect physics simulation off-roading game. Your 4x4 is unleashed in an open world, open floor department store, which acts as the perfect jungle gym to pepper with all sorts of challenges that have you master the quirks of your vehicle as you climb, winch, and slap furniture to victory. It's clear that developer teams Wallaber Entertainment and Curdle Games know how to make a strange player controller feel good without sacrificing the sillier, more emergent aspects of the design from their experience with legendary physics games like Jellycar under their belt. Iron Nest Heavy Turret Simulator is one of the top demos of this Next Fest, and it's no surprise why. This war simulation game has you in the hot seat as the one-man crew of a giant mobile artillery platform, and its dedication to diegetic controls and interface means that every single thing you do in Iron Nest, from receiving orders via telegram on giant scrolls of ticker tape, to measuring your heading, bearing, and blast radius with manual tools on a giant paper map unfurled across a table in your steel behemoth, feels so satisfyingly tactile. Never has a war game felt so immersive without a single ounce of infantry combat on the screen. I lost hours to the addicting missions available in the demo, and with a narrative that makes you go,
Hans, are we the baddies?
and the promise of possibly some Papers, Please-esque choices regarding your loyalty and acquiescence to the powers that be, make me incredibly excited for this game's full release. I've recently found myself inexplicably in the camp of survival horror game guy. a genre I had very little affinity for in the past. But finally playing through the entirety of the Resident Evil franchise in the span of the last few months has fully converted me. One thing I've come to love and appreciate about survival horror games is how much they grip you in the moment, which makes sense. In a genre that cares so much about how it makes a player feel on a visceral level, things like immersion and ambiance are so paramount to the experience that dropping the ball on either of those can completely derail a game that might otherwise be great on paper. And Divine Frequency is a game that completely delivers when it comes to vibes, aesthetic, and atmosphere, with its narrative focus on surrealist and cosmic horror, full of strange and uncanny denizens. Divine Frequency is a first-person survival horror shooter built on GZ Doom, giving it both a satisfyingly retro feel and visual that's emphasized even further with its VHS-style found footage filter. With tense, frightful exploration and resource scarcity that makes every encounter feel high stakes, contrasted with optional boss duels that almost feel like first-person Sekiro encounters, Divine Frequency does the thing that people love about games like Resident Evil 4, 8, and 9. Build up that tension, then blast it away with some high-octane action. Another genre I generally don't find myself picking off the shelf is one that is the closest thing video games have to the taxonomic category of living fossil, the humble point-and-click adventure. But to my surprise, one of my top games of last year was the absolutely fantastic pulp thriller The Drifter from Powerhuff, a game whose narrative had me in a chokehold until the very last second. Like so many of the games that I sprint to like a child running down the stairs on Christmas morning, I immediately jumped to try writer David Lloyd's newest game, the Telwynium, the moment I learned it was running a demo in this next fest. Where The Drifter leaned much more into very modern point-and-click game design sensibilities, the Telwynium is a purposefully retro affair with its 16-color artwork, 4:3 aspect ratio, and lack of hand-holding that evokes the genre's 80s and 90s golden era, but with a narrative that will grip you early on with its subversions of the classic fantasy tropes that suffuse the games that it is clearly inspired by. Going through the demo for the Telwynium felt like playing through the words of a long-lost fantasy series that would have occupied the same shelves as the Wheel of Time, invoking nostalgia out of thin air. This next fest was so packed with good games that I can't bring myself to just leave out games I can't give the full treatment to without making this video take and run orders of magnitude longer. So here's a quick lightning round of some other awesome games I think you should check out. Object Impermanence is a first-person puzzle game where things might stop moving or straight up stop existing if you aren't looking at them. This creates some unique puzzles. Hopefully the full game stretches the idea to its limits. TOEM 2 is the sequel to the beloved photography puzzle exploration game. It's TOEM, but bigger and better, with jumping and platforming to give you more exploration options as well as weird camera attachments like Screwdriver for more interactivity. Brekekekex, is the most stylish and complex arena fighter I've ever played. It's the closest that subgenre has ever come to the precision and mechanic complexity of more traditional 2D fighters. Nocturne is a beautiful RPG with a rhythm game replacing its traditional turn-based combat, with an already emotional narrative taking place in a crumbling and stagnant afterlife. ZWAARD is a stunningly beautiful open-world pixel art action-adventure game with notes of Hyper Light Drifter and Mega Man Legends that lets you completely customize your sword with tons of components from the blade to the pommel that completely change how you fight. Delta is a momentum-based first-person movement sickos game, full of bee-hopping, rocket jumping, and vectoring that would make even the most experienced Counter-Strike surf map connoisseur blush. Petal Runner is a Game Boy Color-inspired RPG where you explore an open world doing Oddjob, delivering pets to their new home, playing WarioWare-esque minigames, and learning about the people you help and the stories that make them human. Moldrise is a first-person horror puzzle and exploration game built in a similar structure to Outer Wilds, where you must first learn to use your limited time and resources to reach the top of your 30-floor apartment building, and learning to optimize your attempts with every death, bringing you back to the start with all your knowledge of the layout and people within. The Core is a physics-based puzzle and adventure game that places a heavy emphasis on exploration and traversal. With some light immersive sim elements, upgradable skills, and a sprawling world, and optional discrete puzzle challenge rooms, it has a little of something for everyone. IGTAP, or an incremental game that's also a platformer, is exactly what it states on the tin. This inventive blend of genres plays off each other's strengths, asking you to optimize your level attempts to get more resources, to upgrade your character, to keep on climbing and accessing new secrets, levels, and more. Onimusha Way of the Sword is Capcom's latest big-budget single-player game in its storied Onimusha franchise. I love me some good parry slop, and Capcom is on a generational roll with how good their recent titles feel to play. Hope 01 is a single-player extraction survival horror RPG that takes place in a massive, handcrafted underground labyrinth with the perfect level of granularity to its crunchy systems and mechanics that make every run feel butt-puckeringly tense. But returning with your loot is a dopamine high that is addicting to chase. Metamorphosis is a brutal and difficult side-scrolling horror exploration game where you must fight terrible creatures with limited resources, platform through massive, perilous, interconnected megastructures while trying to avoid death around every corner with a psychologically twisted narrative. Sprawl Zero is a very traditional feeling Souls-like game where your main combat abilities and customization comes from moves and abilities you steal from your fallen foes. It encourages pressure and high-risk, high-reward play, and understands what makes the combat in the best games of the genre click. Blood Dungeon is the next game from the Nidhogg developers, a combination of basically Vampire Survivors and Spelunky. The normally open levels of Bullet Heaven games is replaced with labyrinthine corridors, tunnels, and passages that add a level of platforming precision to what can sometimes be a very still experience. Normal golf game is basically golf but qualified. Controls that make your hands and brain juggle physics that are constantly fighting your ability to fine-tune your movements, and wacky levels and uses for your club and ball to keep you guessing. Whew. Every next fest I tell myself I'm going to pace it. A few demos a night ahead of the fest, spread it out, be a normal person about it. And every single time I end up 500 Steam pages deep at 2 a.m. whispering to myself, "Where is precious?" while my family sleeps soundly on the other side of the house. 181 demos this time. I don't fully know what that says about me, but what I do know is that I got to be the guy who found some real gems that deserve to have their presence known to the world. My sleep schedule for the chance to even make just the smallest difference in how many people know about a piece of art that someone poured their heart and soul into is one I'll make every time. So if you're here, thank you. Not in a, subscribe and smash way, although I hear that does help. Thank you for just letting me talk about these games made by people who put years of effort and heart into them, and I really do appreciate every one of you that does that. You know the drill by now. This isn't a leaderboard, it's a flashlight. The games I didn't cover aren't lesser, they're just past the edge of what I could get to, and some of them are going to be your favorite thing all year. So tell me, let me know. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me which of these you bounced off of or discovered you loved. That conversation in the comments is half of why this exists. And one last thing before you go refill that wish list. Back at the top of the video, I mentioned I'm putting $1 towards the Sudanese Red Crescent for every demo I played. That's an easy part for me. The harder, better part is the ask I'm making of you. That all this, the free demos, the hype, the luxury of being bored enough to watch a 40-minute video about video games is worth turning outward even a little. A few dollars an hour, a text to someone who's gone quiet lately. The fun was always free. Let's make it cost something good. All right, that's me done. Go find your game of the fest and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.